Começa agora mais uma edição do Tatuapé News. Desta vez eu recebo o pesquisador dos Estados Unidos, Dorian Garrick. Dorian, thank you very much for this interview.
Pleasure.
And I'd like to know more about your work there in the United States. What do you do there?
Okay, so my whole career I have worked as an animal breeder. So if you think of genetics as the study of inheritance, then animal breeding is about using knowledge of genetics to improve a population. So my interest is in the theory and the practice of improving populations. So I work with many species, with animals and plants. I mostly work at the moment with beef cattle, but I work also on the theory. And to improve a population, you need to select the individuals that are above average. So you need to have a way of identifying the animals that are above average.
And do you work at the university there?
I work at the university, yes, in Iowa State. Yeah. And a lot of my work is about how to predict the performance of an animal or a human or a plant using all the information you have. So using their phenotype, what they look like, what they weigh, where they appear, using their pedigree, so who their parents were, and over the last 5 to 10 years, using molecular information. So using what we can see in their DNA, and using all of that information together to get as accurate a prediction as you possibly can.
What are the benefits to use this technology?
Well, there's a real problem with pedigree information. If you know perfectly how good a sire is, and you know perfectly how good a dam is, you can't distinguish the brothers and sisters. So we would predict them all to be the average of their parents. But we know some of them will be better than their parents, some of them will be the worse than their parents. But if all we have is the pedigree, we can't tell which ones are better and which ones are worse. So conventionally, what we have done is we've measured phenotypes on the individuals, or if you can't measure phenotypes, like for milk production, you can't measure the phenotype on a bull, then you have to produce daughters and measure the daughters to determine how good the bull is. So the problem with phenotypes is it costs money to buy each phenotype. You have to pay for it, and in some cases it costs time because you have to wait for the animal to produce the phenotype. So the advantage of genomics is that the DNA doesn't really change over the lifetime of the animal. So if you can test the DNA as soon as the animal is born, you should be able to predict the performance without having to wait to see phenotype or wait to see offspring. So the challenge for people like me is to develop the theory to see how we can do that prediction and to make sure that it works properly.
And the breeders, they are using this technology there now?
It depends entirely on what species you're talking about. There are many challenges that differ from one industry to another. The industry that adopted genomics first was the dairy industry, because a bull that is above average earns a lot of money from the sale of semen, but you cannot measure milk production on a bull. You have to generate daughters, and so you have to wait till the bull is old enough to be a father. Then you have to wait 282 days for the calves to be born, but then you can't measure milk on the calves. You have to wait till the calves are at least 2 till they start calving and lactating. So the bull becomes quite old by the time you can measure his daughters. And it costs a lot of money. It costs something like $20,000 to test a bull. And there's no point testing a bull if you already know you're going to use them. The only point of testing is to test many more than you ever intend to use. So you might test 200 with a plan to use the best 10. So there are millions of dollars invested in the testing and then many years of waiting. So for the dairy industry, they could see an immediate return on their investment if they could shorten that time. And even if it wasn't perfectly accurate, they could screen the young bull calves and only test the good ones. Now the beef industry is completely different, because in the beef industry you can measure the growth of the bull before he reaches puberty. So that by the time you come to decide if this bull is good or bad, you already know his birth weight, his weaning weight, his yearling weight. You can use ultrasound, so you have a lot more information. And so a breeder was not investing millions of dollars in testing these bulls. So to get them to invest in genomics was much more difficult than it was in dairy cattle.
And how are the genomic researches with beef cattle in the United States now?
Okay, so what happened first was that people thought it would cost a lot of money to genotype enough animals to determine which pieces of DNA were above average and which pieces were below average. And since many of the animals in the US are Angus, several people decided to invest in Angus. And interestingly, two pharmaceutical companies, Pfizer and Merial, decided independently to do this investment, and they thought they could then sell the product. And they thought they could sell a product that would work in any breed. So while the breeders still thought it was too expensive, these two companies invested millions of dollars coming up with predictions. Now, what they didn't know was that these predictions would not work in any other breed. So that was a problem, because when they started to market a test, the test they were marketing really only worked in Black Angus. And although some of them were sold in other breeds, when validation was done, it didn't work. And then those companies said, we've already invested enough in Angus, we don't want to invest again in Hereford and Simmental and Limousin and Charolais. We can't afford it. The market is not big enough. So for quite some time, the industry has been stagnant with tests for Angus but not for other breeds. So eventually the breed associations realised that if they were going to have tests in their breed, they would have to develop what we call the training population themselves. So I work in the theory of this analysis. I helped Pfizer develop their predictions. I helped Merial develop their predictions. And so the breed associations came to me and asked if I would help them develop predictions. So I have been working independently with every breed association that is interested to develop their own predictions. And unlike the Angus model, where Merial and Pfizer own the predictions and they just sell the predictions to the breeders, in all of the other breed associations, the breed association owns the prediction. So I have been fortunate to get federal funding to allow me to do the analysis for them, and they have provided the genotypes and the breeding data. So we're working in a partnership to develop the predictions, and GeneSeek, a company which does the genotyping, has also been working in partnership with us to share a lot of the data that they had and to market the test to the breeders. So we have a very different model for Angus compared to all of the other breeds. So for all of the other breeds, there is only the breed association who provides the information, and GeneSeek who provides the genotyping, and my work at Iowa State, which provides the prediction. But the farmers or the breeders just buy that, they pay for the cost of the genotyping, and the prediction sort of comes free. Whereas in the ones sold to the Angus Association, the companies that invested are trying to get a return on that investment. So their costs for genotyping is different in Angus compared to the other breeds.
And what the breeders can expect about the genomic technology? The future.
What breeders expect and what they get is often two different things. So unfortunately many breeders expect that when they test an animal it will be better than they thought it was. But in real life we know that the predictions that come from pedigree are correct on average. So if you test one animal, it's equally likely to turn out better than you thought or worse than you thought. So when they turn out better than they thought, they are very happy. When they turn out to be worse than they thought, they are very unhappy. So they have to get to thinking about the investment not on an individual animal basis. So they should not be going in and just testing the one bull that they think is the champion. They need to be going and testing a group of animals earlier before they've decided which is the best, and let the genomic information tell them which ones are better than they expected and which ones are poorer than they expected.